Loving Eliza by Ruth and Nordin, Chapter 12. John wanted to get back to Eliza, so he worked as fast as he could in putting old Willie's fence together. As he repaired the places that needed attention, he had time to think about everything Eliza had told him. It still hurt. He hated knowing that other men had been with her. It didn't seem fair. It was as if she had belonged to him her entire life, and those men had robbed that for both of them. He had time to access the situation and concluded that she had been ashamed when she told him. He could tell that by the look in her eyes and the trembling in her hands. Her voice had remained tough, though the rest of her hadn't. She wasn't proud of her past, and he realized that was why she had told him she couldn't marry him. She wanted him to be with Daphne because, in her mind, Daphne was better for him. She was wrong, but how could he tell her that? He picked up another stake and pounded it into the ground. He shouldn't have run from her. He just wanted her to stop talking. He'd heard enough, too much, to last him a lifetime. He hadn't wanted to hear any more. She must have taken that the wrong way. She must have assumed it meant he rejected her. He finished the fence, noting that the dog watched him, as if upset that his fun was now at an end. Ignoring the canine's barking, he gathered his nails and hammer and put them in his leather bag. He swung it over his shoulder and lumbered into old Willie's house. "The fence done?" the older man asked. John nodded. "Good. If Harvey would just watch his dog, I wouldn't have called you out. Oh well, I guess there's no use in worrying about the past. What's done is done. At least things are fixed now." John thought over the man's words and agreed with him. What could either he or Eliza do about her life in Omaha? There was no going back and erasing any of it. He would have to write that down so Eliza could see it. Maybe if she understood that he wasn't going to dwell on the past, she would marry him. In fact, that was probably the reason why she kept refusing to be his wife all along. As he left the house, old Willie slapped him on the back. "I owe you more free paint." John nodded that he understood and walked back to his wagon. He supposed he should go to see Daphne and tell her that he didn't want to marry her. It would only be right. But he wanted to clear things with Eliza first. He passed the church, wishing for the 100th time that Eliza had just married him. But maybe she still would. He couldn't give up hope. Not when he was so close to having her as his wife. The ride back home seemed to take forever, even though he ran the horse as fast as he could. As soon as he unsaddled the horse and set the animal out to pasture, he hurried to Eliza's house. He knocked on the door and waited. Nothing happened. That wasn't necessarily a surprise, but he suddenly realized that the curtains were open, and everything was strangely quiet. Sensing that he wasn't going to like what he found, he stepped to the window and peered into the one-room dwelling. His heartbeat picked up, and his grip tightened on the wood frame of the windowsill. No one was there. In fact, he didn't see any of Eliza's things. He quickly opened the door and examined the room. The bed was neatly made, and everything was in its proper location. It was unsettling. He knew that she had left, but from all outward appearances, no one would know it. He hurried to his trunk and threw it open. Her travel bag had been in there. Now it was gone. That confirmed his fears. He rummaged through the room, trying to find a note or something that would indicate where she had gone. Nothing. It was as if she disappeared. He turned around one time, his anxious gaze carefully sweeping the room. Releasing his breath, he ran through a list of possible places she might have gone. Somewhere in town was the obvious answer. But where? Charity Custer's place? Addie and Frank's home? It had to be one of those two. The town was a small place. She couldn't have gone far, and surely someone knew where she was. He raced back to the pasture to get his horse and saddled it up again. Eliza hid in the corn stalks lining the path to town when she heard the sound of a horse charging in her direction. She'd seen John on his way back from town, and now it looked as if he was heading back. Why he was heading back, she didn't want to guess. Her heart constricted at the sight of him as he passed her. Whatever was on his mind, he was in a hurry. Maybe he wanted to see Daphne. And wasn't that what she wanted? That's why she had told him the truth, so he'd find Daphne and cling to her. They deserved to be together. Eliza did the right thing by telling him everything. Well, almost everything. She looked down at the picture in her hand. Her son. The only child she would ever have. A child born out of her uncle's lust. It didn't matter how this child came to be. The fact was that he was her son and she loved him. She always would. She prayed for him every night since she had come to God and changed her life. She waited until John was safely out of sight before she stood up and left the wall of corn. Clutching the picture up to her heart in one hand and holding the travel bag with the other, she resumed her walk to town. The bag grew heavy, but she pressed on, knowing her arms would be sore the next day, even if she did switch the bag to the other arm once in a while. By the time she made it to town, the evening sky brought its assortment of yellows and pinks. It was such a pretty sight that she stood on the edge of town and stared out at the prairie sky. It seemed to go on forever. She wished she could keep walking and never get tired or hungry. Part of her just wanted to leave and fade into that sky. Of course, such a thing was impossible. She sighed and cautiously approached the main street. She recognized some of the people, and thankfully, none were John. Mentally calculating how much money she had, she figured she could afford a room at the boarding house. As soon as she found a paying job, she could afford rent and food. At least her needs would be taken care of. She crossed the street and passed some of the homes. One of those homes happened to be Charity's house. She glanced over and saw John leave through the front door. Scurrying to the nearest building, she struggled to calm her nerves. She shouldn't look. She knew that she shouldn't. But she had to see it again. Before she changed her mind, she peered around the building and saw Daphne and Charity talking to John on the porch. It shouldn't surprise her. She had told him to go to Daphne. And yet, she had to force back the tears that welled in her eyes. What did she expect? What could she expect? He only did what she ordered him to do. Surely there was no fault on his part. Finding little consolation in the admission, she forced her feet forward and hurried to the boarding house. The sooner she got into her new room, the better. She prayed that John and Daphne would stay out of town as much as he did now. She couldn't bear to see them together and happy. Someone called her name. She stopped. Was it John? No, of course not. John couldn't speak. Relieved, she turned around, surprised to see Troy walking toward her. He waited until he caught up to her before he spoke. Is something wrong? She relaxed. No. I thought since Miss O'Connor showed up that it'd be best if I came to stay in town. It was the truth, in a roundabout way. He nodded. That's understandable. If it were me, I'd do the same thing. If only he knew. She cleared her throat and blew a strand of hair out of her eyes. I should get to the boarding house. I can help you with the bag, he offered. She hesitated, not sure she wanted him to be near her. Could she trust him? Pushing aside the notion, she handed him the bag. Of course she could trust him. He was John's brother. Tucking the picture in her shirt sleeve before he could see it, she said, "Thank you." He joined her in strolling by the closed businesses. People milled about and conversed, content to relax after a hard day of work. She didn't bother making eye contact with any of them. Though she knew John would not tell anyone about her past, she still felt exposed, as if they could tell what she'd done just by looking at her. You didn't bring much with you, Troy stated. The bag is light. Oh, I don't need much, she said. I suppose not. So did John bring you in? was the best way to answer that question? She ran through a list of possible things to say, but finally decided on the truth. No, I left while he was here in town fixing the fence for Mr. Jafferty. Didn't you tell him you were coming in? Troy asked. She shrugged, glad that they had finally arrived at the boarding house. I didn't see any need to. He'll figure it out when he gets home. She didn't want to answer any more of his questions. It was hard enough to say what she already had. It was painful to leave John. Anyway, he'll have his mail-order bride now, and that's what matters. Right, Troy said. I agree. He motioned to the front door. I might as well bring this in for you. Oh. She shifted from one foot to the other. Well, all right. She climbed the porch steps, aware that he was behind her, and probably watching. When she glanced over her shoulder, he averted his gaze. She hastened her steps and knocked on the door. The sooner she got into the house, the better. She rubbed her arms. Though it wasn't cold, she felt chilly, and she wasn't sure why. The door opened, and Molly Ritchie smiled at them. How may I help you? I came to ask you about a room, Eliza said. Do you still have one available? Eliza already knew the answer was yes, since Addie had told her that Molly was looking for another tenant. Still, she didn't want to come out and say it. Molly waved her in. I sure do. Eliza turned to Troy. Thank you for carrying my bag for me. She held out her hand to take it. He gave it to her and tipped his hat. It was my pleasure. I'll see you around town. Good evening, Mrs. Ritchie. Eliza exhaled, surprised that she'd been holding her breath. Now that she stepped into Molly's parlor, she felt her tension subside. I thought you were working for John, the woman said as she encouraged her to sit. Eliza settled in the chair and placed the bag by her feet. Yes, well, I'm guessing you heard about Miss O'Connor's arrival today? The woman's eyes lit up as she sat across from her. As a matter of fact, I did. Oh, no wonder. You'll be needing a place to stay. Fortunately, I have a nice room available. It has a lovely view of town, so you can see everything that's going on. Great. Just what Eliza needed, a view of John and Daphne. You do have thick curtains, don't you? That way, Eliza could draw them tight and block them out. Out of sight, out of mind. Well, I do have curtains, but they aren't very thick. Does the moonlight bother you? Sometimes I like to take a nap during the day, Eliza began, and the sunlight can be bright. At least that was true. She was used to resting at some point in the daytime. She usually spent part of her night staying up to read, now that she had the bed to herself all the time. She sighed. Recalling the past wasn't something she wanted to do, so she shoved the memories safely back where she wouldn't have to deal with them. Shifting in the chair, she continued, I do intend to work and pay my rent. Do you know anyone who's hiring? Molly leaned back and tapped the tip of her index finger against her lips. As a matter of fact, I do. Harriet Lube needs someone to clean her house. She's too old to do it herself. Relieved, Eliza smiled. I can clean houses. She had cleaned John's, so she now had experience doing that. Are there any other houses that need cleaning? I don't know of any off the top of my head, but I'll keep an ear open in case I hear of any. Well, that sounds good. Eliza bent forward and opened her travel bag. How much should I pay you? I ask $8 up front. Eliza's stomach tightened into a knot. $8? I know that's 2 weeks' worth of rent, but ever since Malcolm ruined one of my rooms, I learned it was necessary to ask for renter's insurance. He never did pay for the damages. I had to repair the whole room on my dime. That wasn't cheap. She paused and smiled. I don't mean to be cruel. I just need to protect my home. Eliza glanced at the money in her hand. She only had $10. That seemed like a large amount when she left Omaha. Now it didn't look like it was much at all. She looked back up at the woman. How much is it a week? $4. And the $8 will only get me through 1 week? $4 of that $8 is for renter's insurance. Eliza took a deep breath. She didn't even have enough for 2 weeks. Does that $4 include meals? Even as Eliza said it, she winced. It sounded pathetic. But what could she do? Well, yes, food could get expensive. What if I don't eat here? Well, then I suppose we could agree to $3 a week. So you'd only have to pay me $7. So that made it $4 for the insurance and $3 for the week. That would give her $3 left. At least it would get her another week. All right, Mrs. Ritchie, here's the $7. The woman took the money and stood up. I will show you to your room. Eliza obediently followed her up the narrow staircase. That woman you mentioned, who needs her house cleaned, what's her name? Harriet Lube. Do you think I could stop by her house tomorrow to ask about the job? Well, I'm sure she'd welcome it, dear. The poor thing hasn't had anyone to clean her place in almost a year. That long? Why? The woman shrugged as they reached the top of the staircase. Who knows? The last person who worked for her just quit and never said why. Good. That would give Eliza a start on earning money. I'll stop by and see her tomorrow then. She'll like that. It'll help ease loneliness. Molly pointed to the opposite end of the hallway. Alan Gray stays in that room. He's been a recluse ever since his wife died. Now, in the next room is Erica Strickland. She's nearly 60 and spends most of her time sleeping and sitting in the parlor. Then there's you. My bedroom is next to yours. Eliza followed Molly to the small room with a made-up bed, a dresser, and a rocking chair and a small table. This is your room, Molly said. The big window will give you the view that I told you about. Eliza entered it and set the travel bag down. In some ways, it reminded her of her place next to John's house. She walked to the window and looked out of it. Just as Molly said, she could see the main street and most of the houses in the area. She could even see the road that led to John's land. She quickly closed the curtains. They weren't going to block out all of the light, but they blocked the view well enough, and that's what mattered. The room is perfect, Eliza said. Molly gave her a wide smile. I'm glad you think so. I pride myself on being a good hostess. I'll bring a pitcher of water and a bowl for you. If you need the privy, it's out back. There's also a chamber pot under the bed. Baths are allowed once a week. Your turn will be Saturday at 6 in the evening. We must all be clean when we go to church. Well, thank you. I'll return with the pitcher and bowl. As soon as Molly closed the door, Eliza pulled a picture from her sleeve and stared at it. It had given her comfort ever since her son's adopted parents sent it to her. He'd been 6 months old when it was taken. She wondered what he looked like now. He would be 12. She imagined that he was a happy boy. His parents seemed like such nice people. She crawled into bed and held the picture to her chest. The exhaustion of the day suddenly caught up to her. She hadn't slept much the night before, and the day had been grueling. At least it was over. She could finally rest. She slowly inhaled and then released her breath. She would make it. She always did. No matter what life handed to her, she had survived. She did so before, and she would again. The door creaked open. Her eyelids fluttered, and she saw Molly gently placing the pitcher and bowl on the dresser. Sleep well, Miss Sweet. Then Molly turned the knob on the kerosene lamp until only a dim light lit the room. Eliza wanted to respond, to thank her, but she was too tired, and before she knew it, she fell into the bliss of sleep, where all aches and pains disappeared.